Well, hello, cadre. This is your Sensei Al Bob. I'm coming to you on our channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And I'm your griot. Griot. A griot tells you a story, right? And what is the story? It is there, like Grimm's fairy tales, you know? They were there for the listener to get some insight, you know? A moral little tale that you could go, let me think about that. And indigenous folk, the griot had a deeper, almost reverential, spiritual motif platform. Wasn't there? I mean, Grimm's fairy tales were like there to, um, you know, entertain. Well, I do that, but because you were there as the cadre, you are chatting away while I'm, doing my little stream of consciousness here. And, you ask questions, and then every so often I stop and I read whatever has been written up to that point, and then my little stream of consciousness, streams into your consciousness. And that's what makes Dreamy Dreamland special, because it comes from the dreamland. And when I was in Australia, and I lived with an Aboriginal tribe, I went to Australia just to visit a friend, right? I was only going to spend, I don't know, a month or two, if that, right? Because I was with my first wife, Donna, and she didn't, I have to say, the 8 years that Don and I were together, she was the most amazing partner to have, right? She was sweet and loving and smart, and she was a triple cancer. So she was psychic. We'd be driving on a highway and she'd slow down, cop around the corner. And she could sense it. Once I was her first person in her life other than a father who kind of believed in her, And she really she was an Irish family, both sides. Her grandma was a crone, but she threw in the towel, married an American, during World War II, and came back to America so she could go shopping. And her going from being a, bard druid, woman of the woods, to a housewife in, Long Island and Brooklyn, and deep in materialism, basically drove her nuts. But that kind of connectivity to the spiritual realms skipped a generation, meaning Don's mom was just, a couch potato, bonbon eating dental hygienist, right? And her husband worked for Grumman Aerospace, and he was a genius, but because he got drafted during the Korean War, didn't get to go to college, but he worked for the Air Force as a radar guy, and then went to Sperry and then Grumman. And when he died, they had to replace him with like 6 PhDs. He got paid $125 a week and had very little anything, right? And lived in a little box up there and saved in some, ice slip or someplace in Long Island. Anyway, Don, hit the brakes at 16. Her mom didn't have any daycare, so she brought Don to work. And Don learned how to be a dental hygienist and was working for her mom's boss, by the time she was 10, And by time, from 10 to time she graduated high school, she became a surgical dental. She could, drill teeth and pull teeth. She could do anything a dentist could do. And she saved all her money, bought herself a little Jetta Volkswagen, and drove from Long Island to San Francisco in like 1972 or 3, right? And she got a career, She found herself a job working for a dentist, and he paid her really well. She got herself into the Art Institute in San Francisco and did really well. And she became Annie Leibovitz's first assistant and became Rolling Stone's first darkroom chief. And she printed all of those photos, those images that were on the front page of the Rolling Stone in the 60s and in the 70s. And then she came back to New York, and I met her on the subway. And then, we were there for about a year and a half, and went off to Europe because I'm a traveling guy. So let's go. Have you ever been to Europe? No. She got herself a passport. We went to Europe, and we got married in London. And before we went, her father said, "You need to get married," because he knew he was about to die, and he didn't tell anybody, but he intimated that to me. And because he said, my life sucks. The only thing that gives me any joy is Dawn, right? And I love her. And you seem to be the only guy who's brought out the spark in her. And I, you're the only person who will take care of her, So she's I understand she's a handle there, but anyway. So we traveled, those 8 years, basically. We just stayed in New York. We probably would have separated a lot sooner, but traveling the world with her was, exciting. And that's part of my motif is I need, new stimuli, right? And that's why I had a ton of Martrid artists. Hello, hey. Martrid artist. Artist. I'm just going to call you artist. Martrid. Is that your real name, Martrid? Am I pronouncing it right, or my lack of teeth is making it hard to Martrid artist? Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What kind of artist are you? Let's see. No prob. Okay. Martrid. Right. Okay. So, what kind of artist are you? I tell people when I read their poems and I see that they're an artist, I say, oh, you're an artist. And they go, oh, no, I'm not. I can't draw a picture. Well, that doesn't mean you're not an artist. You can be an artist by how you brush your teeth, or how do you peel an onion, artist, spiritual artist. Ooh, I like that. And I like how you have the small s and the capitals, everything else, because what that shows is your motif isn't serving your ego. So I like that. Right? And within the construct of the spiritual artist, I have this motif of the artist of the first person, the aboriginal. Meaning, when I was in Australia and we went to Ayers Rock, and there are all these caves around Ayers Rock, because Ayers Rock is this rock the size of Manhattan in the middle of Australia. And it has its own gravitational field, meaning white people couldn't climb that thing because, it pretty much has sheer cliffs all the way around. But because it's one big rock, they couldn't climb it like Europeans climb the Alps by hitting pitons and ropes and moving up like that and building a little path. Because you knock anything into that rock, it's a rock, it chips off. So there's no way that they can, and then that thing's going to hold you because it'll just break the rock, right? So, let's see. My art incorporates via the medium of the symbolic elements from various cult systems while blending them with iconographic popular culture. Oh, I love that. Bishop, just hoping hopping in before bed. Love you, Bob. Hope all well. Night, sleep well. Well, if you're still watching while you're in bed, which I often do, you can stay there. And if you go into dream time, because I think at some point we might do a guided meditation, so you can, get in on the psychic plane. And artist here, she's a spiritual artist, which I really like. So my art, over the last 40 years has always been exactly what you're talking about, right? And by my development, I am a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologist, alchemist, right? So shamanism, I built a frame, an organic frame of indigenous, the artist in the first person, the aboriginal, right? And that's the frame. And the psycho, to understand someone's mental process, you got to understand their social orientation, what job they have, et cetera, et cetera. And then culturally, that's like where grandma came from and what you have for Christmas dinner. And psychosocial, cultural, forensic. And that's where you look at all the threads. You don't look at just the poster, you look at the threads. Anthropologic, you're supposed to try and put yourself empathetically in the other guy's shoes and wear the grass skirt. And alchemy is a motif of, changing gold, base metals into gold. What are the base metals? Our little bag of water here. What makes it, we're just 98% water, right? And what makes us animated is that there's some, base metals in us, and we breathe in the prana of the universe, which is the occult element here. And in that process, it energizes, it turns us from, this illusionary world is incandescent. That was Lucifer. He was the incandescent one, the illuminated one, right? And but with that, you have shadows. See, the shadow, that's illumination from incandescence. Prana is photonic, and that has no shadows whatsoever. So that you can't lie, there's always truth. Check out the link. Okay, give me the link and I'll check it out, right? And artist, check out my publishing blog, which is xratted.blogspot.com. Go check out my writings. And if I'd love to talk to you, artists, one-on-one, at my the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. So send me a Gmail. If you're in America, maybe give me your phone number. I'll give you a buzz. So what I'm trying to do with this, one of my first little thoughts when I started this almost 2 years ago, when May rolls around, May 8th, it'll be 2 years that I've been doing Dreamy Dreamland. And I've had in different forms art organizations that are cultural, spiritual organizations, like collaborative artist projects, right? I've had aesthetic entities, right, that are developing spiritual technology. And that was the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology, right? And that's when I was at the UN. And the UN's a very esoteric, occult, mystery school, Illuminati kind of, the UN was started by the money of the Rockefellers, right? The property they owned, because it's right next to the Rockefeller Foundation. And they dumped $50 million into that building. They built that building, and they gave it another $50 million to run the UN for the first 5 years. And so they own the UN. The Illuminati, the New World Order, however you want to put it, pretty much owns it, right? Just like they own Versailles, right? But those guys aren't doing what you are doing, artists. They aren't my artists, they're not incorporating these of the medium college, the symbolic elements from various occult systems and blending them with in iconographic popular culture. So they kind of do that, but they're doing it from a very egocentric point of view. Or what we're trying to do here is come from love's co-creation, because love's co-create. Love is God. Love is the only thing there is. Everything else is an illusion. When the Big Bang happened, that was Lucifer being a petulant child, getting really upset and bamu, right? Um, and that caused the Big Bang. That caused this illusion of a linear experience. It's only been 16 billion years. Do you really think that creation is held by the base of only 16 billion years? I don't think so. And there are these archons of hierarchies of all those and demigods and you name it, and they're playing games with us. We're their little pawns, right? But the thing that we have that most don't have is a free will. That's even better, helping to people to escape from mental slavery. Yeah. Fusing these elements so that the viewer can have a personal experience. Can you put a link on the chat here? Other people have done that. I'd love it if you could. And if not, you can leave that link of your thing at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. It does not require a formal religious, occult, or spiritual background. Exactly, because we have our free will, our soul, all right? It can be appreciated by the student of the esoteric, and all that is the occult and esoteric is just hidden knowledge. It's nothing about any boogeyman, right? It's not the paranormal and dimensional dynamics are things that are just the echoes of our fear and pumped up by the energetics of our anxiety of our little bag of water here. That does not require, yeah. And so I got more degrees than a thermometer, but I got them through experience. I mean, I was working in not the scholarly world for the hidden hand, and had access to the esoteric and the occult information. And I was looking at it in totally out of the box point of view. And those guys like that a lot, right? But I would never join the club. I'd never sign in. Let's see, email me. Okay, I shall. Yep. But artists, I would really appreciate it if you could start it, because I have a hard time typing in that. And but if you could send me an email at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, then I'll get right back to you and be right there for you. Okay. I'd really appreciate that. As your sensei, old guy. I really. Okay. So my little thing of today is a discussion about all this craziness that's seemingly going on, our political thing. Donald Trump is like, doing stuff that allegedly presidents don't do. Well, everyone have been scumbags and cheats and liars from George Washington on. George Washington is the biggest one, right? This whole, system that's been put together. Our Constitution is just a con. It's a 3-card Monte. The only people who have any true power are white males, right? And so the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Yep, that's it. That's it. Yep, you got it. So So here we have, so Donald Trump, what's great about Donald Trump, he is doing everything that all those guys in this, why the Senate didn't find him guilty is because they're complicit. They're doing all the same, and they have been forever doing the same thing. And the same thing, what did they went after him for phone calls. Man, he did so much other stuff that he could have been taken down for. But Madame Pelosi didn't want to do it because she is as complicit as he is. And all of those congressmen and senators and anybody who's a politician, there are very few and far between politicians who are trying to do the righteous thing, right? There was a guy named Paul Wellstone, who is the most greatest senator America's ever had. He was honest and always calling everybody out. And what do? He had money. He had his own private jet. He was from the D.C. he was someplace out there in the Midwest, and it was a nice day like today here. It's like it was about 32 degrees. No icing of his aircraft. It was sunnier, no bad winds. The weather was perfect to fly. And he was flying from New York, and he was in the plane was him, his wife, his kids, his whole staff, and his dog. And they were coming into the airport. Everything was fine. There was no mayday, mayday. And something hit that aircraft. Now, that was a modern Gulfstream 7 or 8 or whatever, but it had a total glass screen. Everything was fly-by-wire. Everything was controlled by little silicon chips. And somebody hit that sucker with a high-energy microwave and fried everything. Airplane just fell out of the sky. Boom. Exploded. Everyone died. Because he was pushing a bill to go against the military-industrial complex. And he would not bend, right? And he didn't go to they send you, that guy, Jeffy, what's his name, pedophile. That guy had no money. How did he become a billionaire? He worked at that bank for 4 years, and he was then on the board. And then he got a $22 million, building in mid-Manhattan on Park Avenue that had 42 bedrooms, 42 bathrooms. What is that? That was, he had a sex ring going on there. And he had his own private jet that flew to islands and, all kinds of property, and he had billions of dollars. Where'd he get all that money? He didn't make it. And neither do, and everybody who's, all the, Facebook, Apple, you name any of those Silicon guys, Google, Twitter, those guys are just poster boys, meaning we are, artists. If you really I'm feeling energetically who you are. Basically, gang, where we are, our country is not a democracy. It's not even a capitalist state. The biggest, welfare recipients are the corporations. I mean, look when in 2008, Bill Clinton did more harm to this country than virtually any. He got impeached, but he didn't get, found guilty. He got rid of Glass-Steagall. He put half of, we got more people in jail because of Bill Clinton. We have 6 million people in jail. That's more people that are incarcerated in the rest of the world. I mean, in jail. I mean, you can look at places like China and say, well, everybody there is in jail. And, I could go on and on and on. But again, all of this is an illusion. And what I'm working on here is to build an alternative aesthetic. Artists, you'll like this. It's an alternative aesthetic that is more powerful because it's shamanic and it's alchemical, and it's to redefine the psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic dynamic of the political, corporate, and social state that we find ourselves in, right? And now we have been in this state since the fall of the Tower of Babel. Before the Tower of Babel, our culture, or human being, um, Homo sapien, was characterized by different cultural historical points that went back a billion years. And our society and technology was vastly superior, you know, um, 600,000 years ago, right? And all of the different, you know, I don't know how many millions of years ago when that asteroid hit there in the Mexico and wiped out life on Earth, why did life come back? It was like, and then it was in a nuclear winter for 1,000 years, and that's why there was 2 miles of ice over North America, right? And there have been floods. Like, if you've ever climbed any mountain, you'll find shells on top of the mountain. Where did they come from, right? There are thousands of anomalies. I studied with a guy who in 1912, he was at Oxford, and he put forth the idea that the pyramids were actually technology, and that they weren't just in Egypt; they were everywhere, and they were on ley lines, and that advanced civilizations use this as transmitters, just like Nikola Tesla did with the Wardenclyffe um, apparatus. Um, Gave wireless electricity current unlimited 0 point energy. He wrote this thing in 1912, right? And because he was a rich Scottish earl, he went to both Oxford and Cambridge, right? And this guy was a smart dude. And then he kind of, because people scoffed at him, he went to Trinity and Dublin and really fell in love with Ireland and found pyramids in Ireland, right? And that's who I studied with, and that's who I traveled through Ireland with. That's him and the old crone were my teachers. Hey Jim, good to see you, buddy. We have a new friend named Artist, and so nothing is as it seems to be, and don't believe a word I say. And we're at a window of opportunity, and this virus that's in China, it's the 19. I call it the 19. It's new. It's got a, you know, instead of calling it the coronavirus, they call it CONV-19. I just call it 19, and it's pretty much, don't believe a word I say, but from my research, I've kind of looked at, that discipline of being a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropologist is to basically look at trends, put the dots together, right? In a different way than the scholastics do. They just live in a box. Me, I'm outside the box, right? So this virus seems to be a manufactured bioweapon, right? And what's very interesting is that certain component parts of it were manufactured in Canada, in Ontario, in a military biologic lab, and then sent to China, to this military biolab in that, that neck of the woods where the virus broke out. And it's an RNA string, right? And that RNA string has, been sent to different colleges to be looked at to see what can we do with this thing. And people there who have freedom to talk about it have said, hey, this is a RNA strain, not a DNA strain. So it's dealing with your mitochondria, right? And so they said, look, this whole string of 780 characters, there's chunks been inserted here. It's not an organic string. It's, look, and CRISPR leaves telltale signs, because before CRISPR, genetic engineering was very sloppy, and you couldn't get exact anything. But CRISPR is very exact, but it's still because it breaks the RNA connections. It cuts them specifically right at a certain point where you can stick almost anything in there, and then the rest of the strain works and doesn't like reject it, right? Because, oh, look, it's me. So they have, in the beginning, they have an AIDS part of it, and then they have 3 parts of vampire, bat RNA in there, and then at the end they have Ebola. So this thing is designed to get into your gene thing and totally fake out your immune system. And then the bat guys put in stuff into the gene that are very toxic. And then your immune system like freaks out and you die from your immune response, not from the toxicity of the virus or even the AIDS. The AIDS just kind of, that's why the period of being infected till you start to cough is somewhere between 2 weeks and a month. And by that time, your whole system, as soon as you know it, once you start coughing, unless you have luck and are, in the right place at the right time and you have the right response to it, you're gone, right? So it whacks you pretty quick. But if you can survive it, and I think it's a 5% survival rate from that, you get strong, you feel better, and that Ebola thing has done a thing where it's hiding in your brain because it goes through that barrier, your brain-blood barrier, gets in there, and once you start to feel better, it gives you this punch where it causes your blood pressure to drop precipitously. And that's what you see in videos of people keeling over, their blood pressure drops like that and they fall over. And then, unless they have the right people doing the right thing, the response is very, and so we have all of this stuff going on. And this is more or less, so what I see is like since, maybe a million years after the fall of the Tower of Babel. Because before the Tower of Babel, we Homo sapiens sapiens were a different thing, right? We weren't Homo sapiens sapiens. We were more like the caveman because they were bigger, stronger, had way bigger brains than we do now. I think the Homo sapiens sapien was a genetic manufactured by the by some spacefaring or dimensional faring character who came here to rip off our resources, and that's why humans do that today. That's the imperial way, that's the corporate way. So the imperial corporate thing isn't natural to this planet. And the beings that lived here before then were, the Tower of Babel was developing a technology that would put the indigenous folk of here on a par with the more advanced, not spiritually advanced, technologically advanced, dimensional and ETs, right? And so that's kind of the general story that this Griot is putting down. So we have been injected via the election of, and what it really is last 25,000 years, the world has been run by reptiles, and not so much like David Icke talks about them, but just the reptile male. In our head, we have 3 parts to our head. We have, the reptilian part of our brain stem, and then we have this other part, insectoid, and then we have the mammalian part of our brain. And that's a more empathetic and loving and characteristic, more Aquarian, right? So the reptile part is very Piscean, and the insectoid is more Aryan slash Virgo Capricorn, very controlling, very hive-minded kind of thing. And so we have gone from the end of the Mayan calendar was the end of the Piscean age, period. Right? We had been pulling out of it, since 1947, and then 65 was another bench point, and but 2012 was the end of the Piscean age, period. But there are a whole bunch of reptiles, all these old folks that were still here, and they're just hanging on by their fingernails. And that's the hidden hand. And they don't want to let go. They don't want to let go of their ego. They don't want to let go of their power. And the only way they can control is through fear, right? So, I wish so we're at 36 minutes. It's 8:52 here on the East Coast, and you're watching Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. And I wish we had, artists. You still with us? I'd like some feedback on what I'm laying down here. So the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, the sock puppets, the usual suspects. Yep, you're still here. Are just hanging on by their fingernails. So they're doing everything they can friggin' do to throw the world back, just like when the Roman Empire threw Europe back for 900 years in the Dark Ages. The hidden hand is trying to manifest another Dark Age, wipe out 3/4 of the human race, throw everyone into a Dark Age. Very artist, have you ever seen the movie Zardos, right? The Sean Connery made in the 70s? And it's truly amazing because exactly what's going on now is what this movie was about. That the rich and powerful developed technology of transhumanism, right? And they, developed, faster than light transportation. Yep. And they went to the stars and they did everything. And to do that, they had to throw 3/4 of humanity into the Stone Age, right? So they had these little bubbles of bucolic living, and everything was run by AI. Those little rings they told them, but if they were bad, they would be aged, right? But you could live forever. So they, exactly where we are right now. I've stumbled into what's his name, the guy who has Microsoft, that bozo. He's another poster boy. He didn't make any of that. He was just, they said, hey, you're a smart guy. Yeah, the Wizard of Oz spelled backwards. Exactamundo. And so I stumbled into a lab that was in, 2004 and 5. It's right near Jensen Beach, right near Port St. Lucie. And Microsoft or Bill Gates, one of Bill Gates' secret cutouts, has a class 6 bio lab working on transhumanism, right? And if you go along US 1A, their thing is like along the beach and down, so can't really see the facilities, but their hoods, their exhaust from their bio hoods, you can see them. And I built a class 6 bio lab at Los Alamos and at Brookhaven National Laboratory, so I know what those things are. So I was driving along, what the hell, look at that, what's it? And so I tried to get down there, drove around, and it was can't get there from here. And I finally found this one place that was their like poster of hey, we're doing this for the betterment of man, but it wasn't really the down deep what they were doing. So I found that road and I drove down. And instead of stopping at the parking lot, I kind of went over to where the trucks went. And then I went over and then I went over. And then all of a sudden I was surrounded by guys with machine guns in golf carts. And, you know, what do you do? And I said, hey, I'm just a tourist. I got lost. I'm trying to find the beach. You got to go, sir, and follow this golf cart. Get the heck out of here. And I'm just looking around, and it was like straight out of a James Bond 007, like, Dr. No kind of facility. And this kind of technology, the Nazis were at it. The English and the French were at it in the 19th century. That's what the potato famine was. It was a artificially made, genetically engineered fungus to just attack the potatoes, because that's the only thing that the Irish people were allowed to eat. Ireland was England's vegetable farm, and the carrots and broccoli and Brussels, they all were going great. But by law, the Irish people couldn't eat that. If they stuck a carrot in their pants for their kids, they would get hung, right? This is the Roman Empire, the Reich. First Reich was, Rome's empire, right? Second Reich was a Holy Roman Empire, which was run by the Vatican and the Spanish Inquisition, the Jesuits. And they were the bully boys, right? And the Third Reich is, who the Third Reich was, and they're still around. They actually, end of World War II. So artists, did you ever see Fake Famine? That's right. Did you ever see the movie Hellboy? And, the first one, and it opens with these guys going to an island in Scotland where the Nazis, they're in Scotland, it's the other side of England, and Germany's over here, and they went there because there's some heavy-duty energetics in Scotland, just like there are in Ireland. And they were there using it with very nasty technology to break the doorways open into dimensionality. And that's exactly, artists, did you ever read about the Philadelphia experiment? The destroyer Eldridge, and they were making, electronic shield from radar and light. But in reality, their experiment had more to do with dimensional travel, because when Tesla built Wardenclyffes, to transmit electricity through the air to any place, on any time, any way, and you did that by condensing with torsion fields those barriers between the dimensions. And if you close them just enough, right at the right place, bingo, this little door opens and you have access to unlimited current. So when they built the first alternating current generators up in Niagara Falls, right, and Edison had his generators in New York, and he couldn't transmit the current more than 6 miles before the voltage drop just made it worthless. And he had these really Rube Goldberg things called dynamotors, where he'd have a motor, about 5.4 miles, a big motor, and it would be turning around and it would do a generator, and that was some real, lost a lot of energy. Teslas could transmit alternating current virtually anywhere, as long as, as far as you want, without any loss of current because of frequency and high voltage. So the generators that they built to do this, that they made big hydro plants in the Niagara Falls area. So they had these big alternating current generators. And at the end where the armatures are, there was so the electric current is zipping around, and the magnets up here, and the magnetic fields are in 3 dimensions, right? Not 2, like DC is. And at where they all come together, at the other end of the armatures, they were getting these amazing electromagnetic fields, and they weren't Hertzian. They were scalar. So instead of being in two dimensions, X and Y, they were in 16 dimensions. They weren't just going two directions. They were going 16, right? And they were getting some squirrely things going on right at that place. So they had to build a big cage. Don't go near that. And that's when they started to see into the future and into the past. People who are very sensitive, psychic, per se, would be really affected. And they started, well, we need to experiment with this. And that's where the Philadelphia experiment came from, right? So that was done in 1880 something, and the Philadelphia experiment was done in 1938, I think. So at 60 years. So they were doing, they had turned, Tesla had turned the eastern end of Long Island into one gigantic electronic laboratory playground. And that's why Brookhaven National Laboratory is there. And that's why Plum Island, which was the first CDC / Fort Detrick, right? And now all of CDC has been brought into, the military. It always was, but CDC was kind of it's like NASA. It was like trying to fool people about what was going on when it was all about the military. And that's the real problem of our political thing, is that virtually there is no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. They're just two wings of the same corporate fascist oligarchy, right? And it has been that way since our founding fathers. They were the original fascist, plutocratic, rich, so plutocrat, meaning it's your government is owned by the rich. Fascist means the government is a corporate state. That's what we have, Oligarchy means that all of that is run by bloodlines, meaning white men. And virtually every president we've had, even Obama, is from the same bloodline. Even Donny Boy, right? I think, who was the big fat guy who died 3 days after he became president? Starts with a T, in the 18-somethings. But anyway, everything is way weirder than you could even imagine, right? And that's what Dreamy Dreamland's about. Don't believe a word I say. I'm just telling you a story. Brandon, good to see you, buddy. Have you ever been to Montauk? Yeah. All of those, Preston Nichols, I was part of this thing called the U.S. Psychotronic Society, right? And that was trying to take Tesla technology and twist it even weirder, right? And that came out of my work in, being part of this, NGO at the UN called, alternative technologies, right? And that my teacher, my mentor, was, Billy Kluver, who, was one of the guys who worked at the Rad Lab with Mr. Microwave, put a big horn up into space and was one of the first guys to hear the background radiation. He got a little Nobel Prize for that. He was also an artist. Artists did like this. He was also an artist, and he brought the Armory Show to New York. He brought European modern art to America, because before then it was just, Grandma Moses, realistic kind of horse and buggy kind of art. And and the Armory Show was done on Armory on 50-something Street between Fifth Avenue and Park Avenue. And that's now where the Museum of Modern Art is. That same piece of property. They took the Armory down and built the Museum of Modern Art. And that was my mentor from the, his, center was not only Brookhaven National Laboratories and not only NYIT, New York Institute of Technology, but also the Council for Foreign Relations, right? And he picked on me when I was a young lad because I stumbled they had this thing called Automation House that was their social doorway for the public to see what the New World Order was going to be like. It was kind of like the TV show Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry's part of this crew. He came out of, JPL, and so did the guy who started Scientology, Hubbard, and so did, what's his name, the English guy with the Church of the Devil. What's his name? Who he was the biological father of Barbara Bush, right? Oh, his name will pop in my mind. Anyway, like I said, things are as strange as they are. So I was out in Long Island, and I had a business, and I stumbled across this thing called the Shoreham Nuclear Power Plant because it was built right on the foundations of Tesla's Warden Cliffs, right on the corner of 25A and Tesla Boulevard in Shoreham, Long Island, right? And I met these old ladies, had a little sign, "Stop the reactor." And I talked to them, and I'd worked out in New Mexico. I'd worked in Los Alamos, Sandia Labs, Kirkland Air Force Base, and a lot of other places. And so I was pretty familiar with nuclear technology. And we talked, and she said, "This is being built by the mob, by, Chase Manhattan Bank and the Rockefellers, and they're going to kill us all." And those guys had paid everyone's property tax within 20 miles of the place. So all the average, I like these guys, But it was not heading in a good place. So I jumped on and I helped them organize, because it was just these 6 grandmas. I mean, they had no organization whatsoever. And the anti-nuclear movement was a joke. So I said, "Listen, girls, we had lunch, and I said, 'What do you want to do?' And they said, 'We want to stop the Shoreham Power Plant.' I said, 'Well, that's what,' instead of calling it the Shadow Alliance or, the LGBT amputee, albinos against nuclear power, let's just call it the Stop Shoreham campaign," right? So I became Bob, and the grandmas were great, and they were out there organizing, and every time they needed something, like, we had to prove to the public that this was not in their best interest. So we started a thing right at the gate called the Long Island Life Community, where we stayed in front of that gate 24/7, right? And we had this big pledge that we would stay there until we closed the plant down. We're not going nowhere. We're not going to give up. Don't give up. Don't give in, right? Always be nice, right? So, let's see. Crawley, that's the one. Yep, Crawley. Crawley, Barbara Bush's mom, before she married, her alleged father, was one of those Connecticut rich blue bloods, right? And they would go to their Swarthmore or their Yale or whatever college. And then when they graduate, they would go spend a year in Europe and sow their wild oats and, then come back and marry the banker's son, right? And they had done all the crazy shit, so they didn't have to do it afterwards. So Barbara Bush's mom went to England and got involved in Aleister Crowley's little sex crew. And Aleister Crowley knocked her up, and she came back, married the banker's son, and then had Barbara. And Barbara Bush, his biological father, is Aleister Crowley. Right? So go Google that one, kids. So I saw the pictures from the protest. Yep. So I did all, I kept that, and it was and it was an artist piece, Everything I did was like a performance art piece, right? And so we're out there, and we started our first day of the Long Island Life Community. We started on Valentine's Day in, I think, 1985, give or take. And so it could have been 80. No, it wasn't 84. It was maybe 86. But anyway, Valentine's Day. And it was sleeting and raining and cold. And I was not quite, and I had 3 or 4 guys and gals who Said, yes, we're with you. We'll be there. Right. And so we got there and it's raining and raining and raining. And all I had in my truck was large garbage bags. So we threw the garbage bags over our head and cut a little hole for our face. And that was as best we could do to keep ourselves dry. And, so we're out there and trucks are going by, going in the pothole and, splashing us with water. And there's like 4 of us there. And I got some pictures of that. And our little signs, the paint is running. Anyway, all of a sudden, a limo rolls and stops by. The window goes down, and the guy inside goes, "What are you guys doing here?" And we give him the 411. Well, we have all the everything about the Shoreham Power Plant, and he's like, right, and he goes, "I just live down, less than." 6 miles from here, I have this beautiful place right on the Sound, and this was going to be. I love this place, and I'm from here, and I went away, and I'm a musician, and I stuck my head in, and I said, and it was Billy Joel, and he goes, "How can I help?" And I said, "Well, if you could do something about, maybe, I said, I don't know, but we do need help, and Mr. Joel, if you could help us, it would be great." So we're there. Right. And within, less than a day, that was probably in the morning. And before it got dark, this truck rolls up and it stopped kind of raining. And he pulls off into this lot right next to the front gate. And they assemble a wedding tent. And then a couple other trucks show up. And they have lazy boy recliners and stuff and generators and it's a wedding tent. It's big enough to put 200 people in there. And Billy Joel had bought that lot and got the wedding tent and sent in lazy boy things and tarps and blankets. And every time he had free time on a Friday, he would come down and play music. Not the big whoopee, just him, guitar, or his electric piano. And he did it enough that everyone around there found that, on a Friday, Billy Joel may be, in that wedding tent. And we decorated and covered it in signs. And we had music there. And we were there 24/7. We had music and food there. And when he was there, he would have his caterer come in and, have the line of food, and we made that the funnest place on that side of Long Island, for 4 years. And the other thing I did was I went off. This is a long story to talk about Montauk Project. So I wanted to prove, because my whole thing in the alternative technology NGO was to show that the proper use of technology was the way to go. One of the biggest problems in Africa was a lot of children died just from the fact they couldn't have healthy drinking water, So we devised, ultraviolet light kills pretty much any bacteria. So, and Africa was starting to be overrun by liter soda bottle pop, 1 liter bottles, right? And they were clear plastic. So if you just took whatever Gookie water was, and you had 3 of these bottles, and you took one and filled it up, and then had a funnel with some cheesecloths or your T-shirt, and you poured that water into this one, so you kind of filtered out the mud and stones and the physical gunk, and then you put the top on, and you put that bottle out in the sun for a day, and then you did the funnel and a clean T-shirt thing again, and funneled it into another bottle, and put it there for 2 days. The filtering and the UV gave you potable drinking water, and that's just the people going out and picking up the bottles, right? It didn't cost $1 zillion. You didn't have to build a big machine or infrastructure, and we put that into Africa through UNICEF, and within 2 years, it was knocking the death rate of children down by simply recycling the friggin' bottles and then On the fourth year of this, it was really having an effect. And then the companies that made those bottles put material into the plastic that cut the UV out. And then the death rate went back up. But it was simple, just using a Coke bottle. And we had some other interesting things like that, where we just used whatever crap they had around there so they could make their life better, right? So my other side of, so I had been involved in the environmental movement since 1968. I was at MIT when they had the first Earth Day, and where they buried cars, which was not a very environmental thing, but it looked good. And I was with a guy named Sam Lovejoy, who singularly stopped the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant, because before they start building the site, they had to put these towers up and measure all the weather and everything so they can make a model about, okay, an accident happens, this is what's going to happen. So they put this tower up, and they were gathering, and they keep the tower up there for 6 months. He went there with cable couplers, right? This big, long, 300-foot tower, blinking lights. And he went there at night, and it was right near, I think Putney. So he went up there with the cable cutters, and they cut the guide wires, and they snapped like piano strings. And so this earth-shattering noise of bling, 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 everything snapping and cracking and crashing down, and the big bright light that kind of illuminated the whole frigging city, the strobe kind of went down, and that stopped. So it kind of got everyone's notice that, A, the noise, and then, hey, the blinking light's gone. So the police and the fire guys, and they all went up there. And Sam was there, with a car with the lights on him, and, he had the cable cutters in his hand. And when they came up, they said, "What happened?" He said, "I cut the cables, the tower fell down." I said, "We're going to arrest you." He says, "That's what I want." So he went to court, and he had prepared all the information about nuclear power and how dangerous it was and what it was going to do and why, the Price-Anderson Act, which was, we would never have nuclear power because it's like cutting butter with a chainsaw. The federal government passed this thing that guaranteed the banks who bankrolled it, you put $1 in, we will guarantee you the federal government will pay you $16 for every dollar you put in, and we will give it to you before you start the plant. And that $1 you put in, you can take it from the ratepayers. You don't even have to put it in yourself. So, and it would never happen. They told the insurance companies, we will guarantee that the utility will not be held responsible for a catastrophic nuclear accident. You, the insurance company, will not have to pay for it. The federal government is writing a law stating that it will pay $500 million, and then after that, everyone else can go suck eggs. And that's the Price-Anderson Act. And that's the only reason we have nuclear power. So my little strategy was to go after the Price-Anderson Act and to get people to realize that, they're screwed. And so the most important people we had to show that they were screwed were the police, because they're in charge of health and safety. And I went around to all the police departments in Nassau and Suffolk County, and I had this guy, Dr. Golf. He was the father of nuclear health physics. I might have the name wrong, but if you go Google, he was on the Manhattan Project, and he was, the guy who figured out RADs and REMs and what would kill you. And and after being on here, in Los Alamos and San Diego and doing that he felt really bad about it. So he did everything he could. He was one of the first people to, have the stop the bomb thing. And the peace sign is a symbol of that. Anyway, so he and I would travel around like Mutt and Jeff and go talk to the police. And he would show pictures of the people, because they dropped him in to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the war wasn't even over. He was there hours after the test in a suit and taking blood samples and tissue samples, and then they get him out of there. And so to try to make up for that, he tried to do everything he could to not have the human race get incinerated. And I met him through my friends at the UN. So I got him, because he was at NYT and at Brookhaven. I got him to go with me to every police, and he had all of this stuff, and he had, the most, he invented nuclear health physics. He wanted to convince somebody, here's the guy who invented it, got a Nobel Prize, and we went around to all the police departments. Right. The other little strategy I had was to prove that it wasn't needed, that the utilization of current on Long Island did not demand a 500 megawatt nuclear power plant. So I got all of the power consumption tables from the New York Public Utilities Board, which is all public stuff. Just went and got it. And then I studied it, and I saw the place that had the highest level of consumption on Long Island was Montauk, Long Island. And it was like, but it would spike, meaning, they had a city of, a town of like, 3,800 people. And so that's like almost negligible power consumption over, put over the aggregate. But at certain points, they would use power more than the whole friggin' East Coast. Wasn't just New York State, but the whole East Coast. I mean, this you'd had this graph, and it's like whang, boop, and it was only for periods of 20 minutes. And I said, what the frack is this? So I drove myself up to, well, not too far because I was living in Riches, so I drove about 70 miles to Montauk, and I went to the police chief because that was the only municipal thing in the whole friggin', Montauk's like this little fishing village. And I drove in there and I said, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm from this, and this police chief told me to talk. Oh, yeah, Bob, I know Bob. And so, and I'm pretty good with authority. I can either really piss it off or make them feel very comfortable, right? So, and that's what, a shaman can do, one or the other. And so I got on his good side and I said, listen, and I rolled out on his desk, here is, data from, for 4 years, New York Power Authorities showing your consumption of current. And here, look at this, 18 times this last year and 14 times the year before and 22 times this year, going back 4 years, here's power consumption. And what is this spike? You're using more electricity than the whole friggin' East Coast. What around here uses this current load? And he said, what? And he went and got out his file and went to his filing cabinet, and he took out folders, and he showed that there were violent crimes in Montauk right at the time of these gigantic spikes of current. And we both went, He goes, I've been police chief for 20 years. And in the last 8 years, there are no violent, we never had a murder, and we've had 12, in the last 8 years. And he goes, this is too weird. It's like the dates of this correlate exactly with the consumption of these spikes of current. I said, so what the frack is going on in your little Montauk? And he said, well, I can't think of any place. He goes, how would I know? That's the first thing he said. How would I know this? And I said, well, where are the big power lines? Where are the big metal towers with the big wires? Where is that? And he said, oh, there's only one place. And so we got in his police car and we drove down, I forgot, Montauk Highway, I guess, and along, the Atlantic side. And because Long Island kind of goes to a point, it actually looks like a fish, and then there's a tail, and Montauk's over on this end of the tail. And I forget the name of the island. But anyway, we're going along that highway, and we get to the power lines, and we are going next to this kind of abandoned Nike missile facility, Army anti-aircraft. Nike missiles went up to where the bombers were, right? And then they blow up an atomic bomb to try and wipe them out. So that was a Nike Hercules. And so they had a squadron there, but they went obsolete in the 60s. So, and they went for, MAD, assured mass destruction. Anyway, so we're there, and we're at the thing that says, federal, don't go past this, right? So he's the sheriff, right? And wearing the police car. He's wearing the uniform. So he goes, I want to go in there. I want to see what that's in there. And I said, yeah, well, let's do that. So he goes to the car, gets a bolt cutter, cuts the chain. We push the doors in, we drive in. And there's this gigantic radar antenna. It's the biggest friggin', I've been around a lot of radar units. I've seen a lot of microwave. My mentor, Billy Kluver, he invented half this stuff, right? So this thing is half the size of a friggin' football field. I've never seen an antenna. And the horn, meaning, you know, microwaves are generated by this thing that looks like a seashell. It's called a magnetron under, and you can't just put a wire on it. They have what is known as a waveguide. So from the thing that creates the microwaves, it takes it off at a point and brings it up to where the antenna is, and there is what is known as a horn. The waveguide goes to this thing, and this mathematically sized horn kicks out the wave, hits the antenna, and bounces off the antenna, goes out there and looks for airplanes and such, right? So the friggin' wave, and most waveguides are like about this big, for most radars on military ships and stuff. They're not that big. They're as big as the microwave is, right? And so this thing you could have, the waveguide was as big as your garage, but it goes all the way up this tower, and and the antenna is as big as half of a football field, and it's like, whoa. So, and it goes down in the top of this building, right? And so, we drive into this thing, and this military facility doesn't look like it was abandoned. It looked like it was destroyed. Everything is turned inside out, right? And the metal, buildings are turned inside out. How the heck did that happen? And so this building that the big antennas on top of is, big metal top, big concrete, everything. And the doors that went in there were like blast doors, but they were blasted off. It was virtually, and it was like jaggedy where they were hooked up to the gigantic hinges, which were gigantic hinges. And the door was like that thick. And it was like somebody had a super duper laser beam or something, because the doors weren't just broken or melted, or they were, and this part was gone. It was just the big long chunk attached to the things, and we're like, what the frick? So he goes out in his car and he gets his shotgun, and he's got two big flashlights. He gives me one, he's got one, and we go in the building, darker than dark, and we go through the door, and it was springish, maybe 40, no, it was 50 or 60 degrees. But man, you went in through that door, the temperature felt like it dropped 50 degrees, right? We go in there, and, we kind of poke around at stuff, and things are twisted, and it really looked like you didn't want to be there when this shit happened. And all of and the horn came down into a gigantic crystal, right? And it looked like they grew the crystal because there were nodes around the crystal, and there were, again, cabling out of the crystal into IBM 360s, right? And they were just melted, just like, they like, if you know what IBM 360 is like, well, it was like a 1960s version of what your laptop would be. So it was like about the size of a school bus. And they had about 6 of these things around the crystal that were like melted like butter. And the smell, and there was all kinds of fungusy things growing everywhere, and things were glowing. And he's like looking at me, and he goes, I don't think we should be in here. I said, I don't think, yes, I don't want to bump into anything that did this to this place. So let's, we've seen enough. right? I didn't even take a picture of it. It was just like too weird. I mean, I actually had my camera because I go everywhere with my camera because I'm a photographer. Anyway, so I kind of, we got out. And when we got out, the black cars with the guys in the black suits were, coming in. And they had big guns. And, he put his shotgun down right away. And we kind of just walked out of the van, put our little hands up. And they said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm the sheriff of this area. I have responsibility. I have authority over this site." And they go, "No, you have no authority here, sir." And they looked at me and, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm Dr. Al Bob, and I'm from Brookhaven National Laboratories." I'm totally lying out of my teeth. And they go, "Hmm." So anyway, they say, "Okay, get out, get in your car, drive away." And so I did that, and then some guy, so I knew a number of people in Brookhaven, and then one of those people got a hold of me and said, "What were you doing out there, Al?" And I said, "What you were out there in the Shoreham? I mean, the Montauk, it's Fort, whatever it's called. You're not supposed to go there. It's like really toxic, off limits, da da da." I said, "Yeah, I looked it up. It was supposed to be anti-aircraft Nike." Yeah, they had some accidents with rocket. I said, "No, those things are solid boosters. No, that's no. Sorry." Anyway, they said, "Well, you should come for lunch. We'll explain it to you." So I did, and this guy, kind of, he knew the people I knew at the UN. He knew Billy Kluver. He knew George Christie, and he said, "Yeah, I've heard about you." And he goes, "So, what do you want to know?" And I said, "So what was that?" He goes, "Oh, that's the Montauk Project." And he goes, "So you're part of the U.S. Psychotronic Society too, right?" Harold is part of there. Harold, Harold, yes. And he goes, and Preston Nichols, and he started naming off a whole bunch of people, Al Bielek, Duncan. And he goes, they're your buddies, aren't they? And I go, yeah. He goes, "Well, they know about that." I said, "No, they don't." And I told them about this over, it's a couple of weeks have gone by. And he goes, "No, you don't understand. They actually work there." I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yes, we've had to blank out their memories of what was going on there." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "What we'd like you to do, because you're their buddies, we'd like you to take them back. Because we kind of want to jangle different parts of their memory. And you're their friend, and it would be good for them. It would be healthy for them." And these guys all had issues. And I said, "Okay, so I can go there." So, "Yep, you can go there twice, and you can actually take pictures, So and Preston had a house in Long Island that was his lab. And Al Bielek, me, Duncan, and three other guys who were actually engineers, who worked for RCA and for Sperry. And Preston worked, I think, for Sperry. And so, we went, and so we used to, and we were all big collectors of, there was a place in New York City called Radio Row, which was it's kind of right where they built the World Trade Center, but before the World Trade Center, that area had been, back in the day, where the ships from Europe would come. And so they had like warehouses there, 3 and 6 story buildings built in the 18 whatevers. And, they'd unload stuff and store it and then ship it out. Anyway, so, after World War II, those buildings were just almost abandoned. So this one guy had 5 or 6 of these buildings, and he bought up every kind of radio thing from, Tesla till end of the Korean War. So there was stuff from World War One and stuff from, 1890s and stuff from World War II. And we were radiophiles, and I was a ham guy. And so we just go through, and it was just piles of this stuff. And he'd sell it to you for nothing. And so I was, a big Tesla file. I lived in Tesla's laboratory on the corner of Duane and Hudson. it was called the Mohawk Electric Company when they were building the power facilities at Niagara Falls. Anyway, so I lived in that building in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and there were still apparati that were part of that building because that building was tuned harmonically. If you ever read Margaret Cheney's book, Man Out of Time, um, it talks about he was, resonant frequencies, and he had these devices that could, tune things, and he had chunks of the steel of the building, so the building could be tuned, and he was demonstrating to um, uh, a guy from the Herald Tribune about this, and he started the building vibrating, and he nearly caused all the buildings in, the Tribeca area in the 1870s to collapse, And they were just building the Woolworth building, which was the tallest building in the world, and he almost caused it to collapse, So I lived in that building, had access to all of these wild and crazy early radios that weren't, Hertzian based, they were scalar based. And my buddies in the U.S. Psychotronic Society, had that same kind of passion about that kind of technology. So we were all trying to, and these guys had been, because they all worked for defense contractors, were picked out, and they played with their brains, and they kind of had them work in those facilities. And see, I never did that. I did all this kind of stuff on my own, and I always had really interesting mentors who would, let me play with their toys. And there were many times that, I was invited to, sign in, and I said, very, very flattering. I would really like that, but no, I want to own my own brain. Thank you very much. And, I'm not a guy who likes to stick around. All these guys stayed in that neck of woods. Preston is probably still in Long Island. Wonders nukes could be yet another excuse for. Well, I don't know how many times they tried to nuke, to start the ball rolling on that, and someone has an antidote for radiation. Yes, kabuchi mushrooms is an antidote for almost anything, and white birch trees will if this virus thing gets taken off, go get some white birch bark and chew on it, suck on it, along with licorice root, not candy, not pills, but the root. Very good. Right? Yep. COVID-19. I just call it 19. Well, no, he didn't play with pigeons. He loved pigeons. And who he really loved the most was the white dove. And he would go out into Central Park. He in the last years of his life, he lived in Waldorf Astoria, and then they put him in the New Yorker. And he would just, because he couldn't do any more work, couldn't have a lab, except when they needed him. Like I said, he worked on the Manhattan Project. He worked on the Philadelphia experiment. He worked on a lot of other things of that. Someone once asked Albert Einstein, was he the smartest man in the world? He goes, oh, no, I'm not the smartest man. And they said, well, who is? And he said, Nikola Tesla. Yes, fungus eating radiation. So that's why we're in this window of opportunity. All this stuff is going on, which is going to push. And we're no longer in the Piscean age, so we really can't be ruled by fear. So if people, and that's what the cadre is about, to energize the human race to not be scared, to understand the only thing that exists is love. And we, through love's co-creation, could manifest anything. Just a handful of people can, And, people go, oh, don't you, you only have 300, I hate calling them subscribers, but I'm more interested in quality than quantity. So, boo. Jane, you're going to have to get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 and tell me what your retracted messages were. Anyway. Could explain the buzz I hear lately on the 5G flukes. Yeah. A 5G is there to, kind of bore into our brains. But again, it's another thing that is an illusion, you know? And what's really interesting is how, like, I live out in the middle of nowhere, and they're putting up 5G antennas everywhere around here. There's nobody here. What are they doing with that? Not so much where I am particularly, but if I go 10 miles over there towards, Johnson City or towards, that's when within 15 miles of Johnson City in the very rural area, 15 miles within Boone, or 15 miles within Kingsport. But these are all very rural areas. I am like even further in the rural area, and people are super poor. So there isn't much of 5G around here. But over in those other areas, and it's like, I'm so sorry about the retraction. No, yeah, it's okay. Where do live? Where do I live? Can I buy you some pancakes? Yes. Do you live near Boone, North Carolina? That's my IHOP office, right? Or my Richie People restaurant is in Johnson City, and I am from my front door in either direction. I'm about 40 miles. So if you live, if you can get yourself to Boone, I can meet, and both those places are great because I can sit down, be warm. I know all those people there for a couple of years, so they let me stay there all day long, and I can eat something and stay warm. And the best thing about it has great Wi-Fi, and it has 5 bars so I can receive phone calls. So, whereas where I am here, I can't receive any phone calls. And yes, I do have. I'm taking care of a friend, so I'm in his basement, and he does have satellite, and he does have the internet, but the bandwidth isn't as great as those two towns, and they have and so anyway. So I'd love, if you live, if you live nearby, I'd love to hook up with you, right? And as spring shows up in the next month, anybody who wants to come and visit at the place, I'd love to have a cadre here that we could, because I want to start a thing called the Traveling Video Art Circus, right? So I want to take all of this on the road, and what I need is, artistic people who think outside the box, and everyone needs a certain thing that they do well. Because if you do one thing well, you can do everything well. I've mastered many things, and so one thing I am somewhat lacking is an IT ability. Right, it's not in my gene pool. Now, electric things I can deal with anything electric. But I can, I'm doing this, I figured out how to get on YouTube and how to get on Gmail, but I'm really not in that generation, I'm not really, because I don't feel comfortable with it per se. I appreciate what it can do, but so we need an IT person. And now I'm a good writer, so everyone needs to go read my stuff at xratted.blogspot. Now I'm an Aquarian's Aquarium. So what I do best is work with a crew, not be the boss, but to be the grandpa Smurf, right? I'm very good at that. I'm very good at leading by example, just being me, right? And then other people do the same thing. Well, look, he can do that. I can too, right? So when you have a team where everyone is, and that's how we stopped the Shoreham Power Plant. It was basically 6 grandmas and about 20 other people. And we beat the crap out of the Ronald Reagan, George Bush administration, um, and the Rockefeller clan and the banking clan. We just, because we never gave up, we never gave in. And I mean, we won 3 legal battles that went to the Supreme Court, and our lawyer was a housewife. I mean, while we were doing this, she decided, we need legal. So she had gone to, school, and then she went and got her, then she became a mom. And so she just was a mom, but then she said, to protect my babies, I have to, become, get in the bar. And she went to the Supreme Court 3 times and won. Housewife against, gigantic multi-million-dollar legal guys, right? And Ronald Reagan would just sign executive order to push that out of the way, and that's what's going on right now. But the thing about what's going on right now, the shit that the Reagan-Bush administration did, unless the media did not advertise it, didn't tell you what was going on, and everything. And so everything that went on then is going on now. The thing that Carrot Head did with telling Barboy to cut his friend a break, that goes on. People are going on, MSNBC. Oh, it's the end of times. Our legal system is falling. Oh, it's no, they're just telling the public, hey, the powers that shouldn't be are going to go ream you a new one, and we can now blame Carrot Head for it. But it's really the corporate structure that's been doing it forever, and we're just being told that we're expendable. And so you just bend over, kids, but no, it's not that, And the stopping of the Shoreham Power Plant, how that ended was, so we put up a good fight. And my little task was to do all the things that, fell outside the purvey of what normal people would think of doing. So I made it fun. So, when we decided we had to do, direct civil disobedience, the first thing I did was, first I said, okay, guys, everyone's like organizing for this big rally. I said, okay, that's great. But we're already doing this big every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday. We had teach-ins in the tent and out in front of the plant. And we're just going to do more of that because, okay, we can do these big things where we get 100,000 people and show, America what it would look like if there was everyone was freaking out and trying to get, and it was hard to get out of Long Island. They only had 2 Long Island Expressway, Northern State, to move 1 million people. Not going to happen, right? So if it's out in the middle of Canada, in a big state, and everyone can go this way, but it can only. Anyway, so, and, it was right on the, if the Shoreham ever blew up, it would take out things in Connecticut and Vermont and anyway, so we had to, right? So we made it fun. So when we'd have these rallies, we'd have music stars. We did things in New York and the Garden and out at the place that was in front of the World Trade Center, because they built the World Trade Center and then there was an economic collapse. So they had this big sandbar that went from the World Trade Center up to 16th Street in about 2 miles. And it was about half mile wide. And they were going to build what they called the Marina, which is there now, which is really expensive, condos and stuff. But in the 70s, they didn't have money to do it, so it was a big sandbar. So we used to put on concerts and art shows and all kinds of stuff like that. We just did it. We didn't get a permit. We didn't ask anyone's permission. We just freaking did it. I would hook the power up to the street lights and we just do it, right? And there was no one there, so no one cared, right? And the cops would come and we would be barbecuing chicken and drinking beer, and it was, here, have some beer, have some chicken. And they'd hear the music and, oh, that's fun. Okay, that's good. You guys are good. There's no one here. No one's complaining. Can we come to the party too? Yep. And so when we decided we were going to do big time civil disobedience all the time, right? Just keep doing it. Just keep not just doing it once a year. We would, if we're going to spend the time to organize it to do it once, we would do it 20 times, right? Because once you do something once, to do it another 20 times is you've already organized to do it once. It's just doing it over and over and over again. So that's what we did to get people's attention. And so what we did after we educated the police on your ass is grass, and this thing goes, you're the first to die. Your families are the ones, you're not going to be there to get them off the island. The crowds are going to roll right over you. You're going to be dead, and then you're going to be radioactive, and no one's going to touch you, and your family's going to die too. And Dr. Golf would show them pictures of what the people look like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that there had been hundreds of accidents in America that no one talked about, right? In Los Alamos and San Diego, and even in Brookhaven, right? In Brookhaven, they had a reactor there, and people didn't even know there was a reactor in Brookhaven, and it went supercritical, blew up, and the control rod shot through the containment facility, and guys who were on gantries above it, they got speared, and they were like pinned to the concrete roof of the containment building. So when they went in there were 20 guys, stuck on there, going, glowing, and it took them a year or two to get the bodies down. It was really a mess. And did they, put that on the New York Times or, the Channel 4 radio? No. So, we sold all this stuff to the cops, and they were like, had our backs. So, and he showed them all the things they could take. So they may survive it, different supplements and different herbs and different vitamins. And so, and we were teaching them how not to have PTSD. And so the cops really liked us, So when we decided to do this serious come to Jesus civil disobedience, we went to the Suffolk County Police and said, hey, listen, we're going to do this, right? So what we want to do is to show you how to work, let's work out a system so no one gets hurt, no one's, that you can stay in control. And so I built my, Donna's brother had a fence business, and he gave me some of, storm fencing, and we stuck it up at the parking lot of the Nassau County police, facility, and we practiced the guys, and we said, the people who are going to do the civil disobedience, it's not going to be thousands of people. It's just going to be this 60 people who are well trained, and we want to bring those 60 people here, and we're going to show you what they're going to do so you can relate to it, and you can arrest them, and everyone will be happy. They will know you. They can call you by name. You can call them by name, and then you can. And we'll have the judge on site in a trailer where he can give them a ticket, and it'll all be, not a problem. And so the cops, the lawyers, the judges all said, this is great, sure, no problem. So when we did nonstop civil disobedience, it was like a party. The cops were happy. We had food for them. And this is how you have to deal with police, with authority. It's like, have them involved and feel, they want to be part of it, right? And this is true alchemy here, gang. This is the alchemy I'm talking about. This is the aesthetics. So that's, there are other people, oh no, we have to fight the cops. I said, no, we don't. They have to be on our side. So we did this a number of times, and it so pissed off the feds. So Ronald Reagan signed another executive order saying that anyone coming onto the premises from a nuclear power plant, they would put up these big signs and put this big orange line on the property. If you go past this, the federal police have the authority to shoot you in the head, right? And they will, right? Because you're breaking federal law, and this is national security. And so when we did that, once they said, okay, we just passed this new executive order, we can't do that civil disobedience thing anymore. Can't go on the beach. Can't do this, can't do that. We're going to shoot you dead. And so, we, sent letters off, and none of the media would follow anything we had, right? We had no outlet in like the Nassau County newspapers and the TV stations. I mean, nobody, because they were all owned by the same bank. And so they didn't put anything, so we couldn't communicate to the public anything. So one day, so I was printing up these flyers, and doing it on the Xerox machine was pretty expensive. So I found a guy who had a penny saver, and he had a web offsite printing press. So I said, "Can you print I want like 100,000 of these flyers. How much is that going to cost? Can you do that under $200?" And he starts reading. He goes, "I'll do it for free." And because he hated the Long Island Mining Company because they kept jacking up his electric bill, right? And so he just really hated them and said, "Oh yes," so he did them free. And then he said, we were like pamphleteers. We would just give it out to everybody. And so he said, "Can I start putting these in the penny saver?" And I said, "Sure. Yeah, more than me. Yeah, great. That's a great idea." Because he actually had a 20,000 every week. 20,000 people would pick up the penny saver to see where to buy this and that, and he, basically gave it away, a nickel a copy, right? Anyway, so he started and I started writing stuff, and a few other of us who were better writers than I started writing stuff, and so half of his penny saver was stuff we wrote. And then the people started, 20,000 people. "I didn't know that. I didn't know. Oh my God. Ah, So, and that was early on. So what happened was, because none of the newspapers, none of the TV, none of the radio would put this on, um, he started, at a certain point, he had almost 250,000 penny savers going out every week, and his advertisement thing went up like through the roof, and he started charging $1 a copy. So this guy became our biggest, money source. We need money. He would write a check. So we had ample, and so none of this was, this all came out of, just, doing it with love's co-creation. So long story short, so we put up the good fight. I mean, at the end of it, we had all of Long Island, because that was super duper Ronald Reagan, and they became Democrats. They hated it. They all loved local because they were paying their taxes. They wanted, they were marching on against we had people. Those people, the ratepayers, were camping out on the front lawns of the Wilco executives, right? We had people who had family in Albany who would go after, be on Mayor Cuomo's front doorstep with signs. And the closer he had an office on the World Trade Center, and in Albany, we'd always have like 20 or 30 people on his front doorstep. And as he got closer to, Shoreham, when he would go to his office, and we'd have 20,000 people because he would, we knew his schedule. So he was coming to New York City for stuff. We would have people following him, 20,000 people there. I mean, this is how you get something done. So the folks who are doing crap now politically, it's a joke, but you have to be committed. You have to do it. So the only way you can do that, you can't, like, the other thing, everyone's so solemn about what they're doing. I made this movement fun. Everyone had a good time. Everyone had something to eat. Everyone wore a T-shirt. I mean, we had a good time doing this, right? We had a community. We were all brothers and sisters. It was the way to go. So how this worked out was, gotta bust out, hit me up on the email, right? So, but artists, email me first so I can just reply to you, okay, please? I mean, before, you're still at your laptop or something, bust me right now an email to thedudeawake42@gmail. Do that now, and I'll get right back to you, okay? And we'll go have pancakes. Yep, love and fellowship. Yep, and that's what stopped so just get the last end of this story here. So we've done everything humanly possible to stop this plant, and we've gotten the whole community behind us, right? And we've changed the political structure, and it's it's just changing. And so Ronald Reagan signs one last because we blocked the transportation of the nuclear material by road or train to the Shoreham site, by court, right? So what did he do? He signed an executive order for the Navy to bring it in by sea, and he just signed it, and they did it, and they fueled the plant, right? And then they fulfilled the regulation of having a low power test. And the first thing you have to do for a low power test is to, before you hit the switch to crack, the neutron source to start the chain reaction, you have to show that everything works, right? And part of that is to show that the emergency equipment work, right? The pumps and this and the backup generator and all that stuff, right? So they've fueled it, and they're going to do that test on Monday. So on Sunday, we have a dirge. We have in the big tent, we have everybody in there, like 1,000 people. Billy Joe's playing, everyone's eating chicken and smoking boo and drinking champagne, and just a dirge, with an Irish wake, right? And everyone is toasted, and we're all sitting in our lazy boy chairs. And there was this nun, Mary Halpin, and she was in Marinol, and she was a doctor, and she was in El Salvador when those nuns got whacked, and she was part of that crew. And her being a doctor, she went off to deliver someone's baby. So when Jimmy Carter sent in a hit squad to kill those nuns because they were in making trouble for Chase Manhattan Bank, Mary didn't get whacked. And so she doubled down. So she came back to America. She saw all this craziness going on in El Salvador, Nicaragua, that whole neck of the woods. And the Iran-Contra stuff didn't start with, Ronald Reagan. It started, back in the 1890s with, the Rockefellers. So anyway, so this girl, she's hardened. Nothing stopped Mary. And, she's like, I was probably 30-something, and she was almost 60. But, she was in pretty good shape, and she loved smoking boo and drinking wine, And so many a night we were out there on the line freezing our butts off, and she'd be out there. I mean, she was, I could call her up. If someone couldn't make it, I could call her up, and she would come, right? So she was at NYT. She was teaching there medicine. And so anyway, we're sitting in our lazy boy thing, eating chicken legs and smoking boo and drinking champagne. And she goes, "Look out there." I go, "Look out where?" She goes, "Look over. What's that black dot? It's like negative space." And it was a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, not a breeze, not just warm. It was summer. It was a beautiful day. And I'm going, "What? I can't say anything." And then also, "Oh yeah, what is that?" And it is coming straight at us, like at a a zillion miles an hour. I mean, first it was a little dot, and then boom, it was like almost, and then Zingo was on top of us, and it gets really dark on top of the nuclear power plant, and it starts hitting it with lightning bolts, boom, 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 like a machine gun. I mean, I've never seen lightning like that. And the rain was, it was this black cloud, and the cloud was kind of over us, but not really. But the cloud was dark, like negative space over the nuclear power plant, and the rain was coming down. You couldn't even see the nuclear power, but it wasn't raining on us, and it's like, 600 yards from where we were sitting in our lazy boy under the tent, and it's over there it's still sunny and blue skies, but there, and like I said, lightning bolts hitting. I've never seen lightning bolt, like a machine gun, and it went on for about 20 minutes, and we're all like, "Whoa." And at first we thought it was just that we were all stoned, but no, it was like, whoa, So, and the water ran down in front of us and started washing all the cars out in the parking lot down into this ravine. And then the water kind of washed all the cars into Long Island Sound. It was like, whoa, and half the cars were government cars. And so it was like, watching this, whoa, right? So that was amazing. So we, and then after 20 minutes, it stops lightning, and then another 10, 15 minutes. Within a half an hour of that, it's all gone. It's blue sky over the thing. But man, it's like a tornado, hurricane, flood just washed out that whole, like I said, washed all the cars almost into Long Island Sound. So we're like pretty amazed. But we go back to partying and party all through the night and all into the morning, watch the sunrise. And then we get out on the line, to make our last big. We don't go over the fence, but we have about 3,000 people all around the plant, and we got our signs, and we're chanting and playing music, and just having a good time. And so, we have the bulletin on what their procedure is going to be, and so we're watching it. We're about, again, 300 or 400 yards from where the building. Well, we're for 600 yards from where the building is, the reactor. There were other buildings closer to us. So anyway, and we, can hear certain things go on, and certain horns, and certain this and certain that. And then all of a sudden, we hear this really wrenching sound, an explosion, and then a fire. And what had happened was they did all their kind of little tests, and they went through their checklist, and they got to the point where they were going to start up the backup generator and then take the plant offline and have all the pumps and safety equipment run off the power of the backup generator. And when they hit that switch to cross over, they dead shorted the two. And then the transformer started blowing up, and it melted all of the wire, all of the 18 zillion miles of control wires melted into a gigantic puddle of copper and plastic on the floor. So that reactor, and luckily they had cracked it, but did not start, the fissioning of the material, right? So it somewhat contaminated the reactor core. So they couldn't just take the fuel assembly out. It was more complicated than that. But it fried everything, right? All the controls, all of everything. And it got to a strange point to where they had this by law they had to have, like horns, like, sirens, get the heck out of here. But they were like, big speakers. So they were beep, beep, make the kind of police electronic sound that we have today. And they could talk over. And so once the explosions happened, they said, we are asking everyone to evacuate the area 6 miles away from the plant. And we were like, huh? Now we had, Geiger counters and all kinds of instrumentality to see of any toxic exposures, and there wasn't any. So we decided we weren't going to go anywhere, right? We're like I said, about 3,000 lists. We said, no, we're not going to go anywhere. And the cops were there, and they by that time they had become they had gotten trained and had they had this truck that could measure anything. And they were also coming over to us and, yeah, we don't see anything. And I said, well, we're thinking we're not going to start a panic and get the heck out of here. If you want to go into town or to different parts and maybe move kids away or schools or hospitals. And he goes, okay, that might be a good idea. So they kind of did the school thing, right? They went to schools and said, let's move the kids 6 miles away from here and to areas where they were getting buses together just in case something really bad happened so they could really get them out. And so they were starting to prepare. And then the NRC guys, who were really on our side, because these guys are like, they believed religiously in nuclear power. And they were very pissed off that Long Island Lighting Company was building these reactors, because normally people like Babson Wilcox, Westinghouse, GE build these things, and they had like the mob electricians. That's why this stuff blew up. And I did a film. I went into, before I really let people know where my beliefs were, I went into local and said, hey, listen, I'm a filmmaker and I used to work in the nuclear industry, and here's my credentials. And I said, I want to tell you a story. So, and this was about 3 years before this, party happened. And I brought my mother in, instead of being me in front of the camera, I was holding the camera, and Don was there, and she was clicking away, and I was filming my mom, and my mom was just being a mom. She was not a nuclear engineer, smart lady, but so she's like, looking at the place, boy, this looks like a mess, and they had all these racks of control wire, and they were all the same color. They got a good deal on red, 14 THHN, and she goes, how do you know which wire? There's 18. He said, how many wires up there? And he goes, oh, about 100,000. And she goes, how do you know? They're all red. How do you know which one? Oh, we have a machine that. And she goes, really? And that's the main problem: the lightning bolts, and the fact that someone made a switch of one of those 100,000 separate wires, all red, and it caused a dead short and melted every wire in the whole place. But in this movie, she's going around. She goes to this refrigerator, opens, and it's full of vodka bottles. And she goes, should people be drinking vodka while they're building a nuclear power plant? And, she just kept, she's very observant. And she saw this, she goes, what's this? Oh, that's a containment vessel, and it's this big, inside is the, reactor core, and it has a metal containment vessel. But between that and the building where people are walking around, there's about, 8 feet of, rebarred and basically, reinforced concrete, which is supposed to be, explosive proof. Anyway, so my mom's got her hand. She goes, what's this rubby stuff? She puts her hand in, and there was a gigantic void in the concrete. And they stuffed paper in there and covered it with a plaster of Paris. And she just stuck her hand in there. She goes, should there be? And she started pulling the paper out, and she goes, shouldn't there be concrete in there? And I made a video of this. And then I had this TV show in New York City called Potato Wolf on New York Manhattan Cable. And we had lots of different things on it. But one of the shows, and there were 9 of us who were producers, so we all did whatever we were doing, and we'd help each other do all these different shows. Anyway, so I did this one show called Between the Lines, Corporate Criminals. And it was a show that we would take stuff straight out of the Wall Street Journal and then write it into a story that was about the near future, where the corporate wars happened and everyone was wearing universal product codes on their forehead. And I had a girlfriend at the time who was a great comedian. And, so she was like, Lucille Ball and Gracie Burns. Anyway, so I put it on that show, and a lot of people watched that show on Thursday nights. We had more people watching our cable TV show than the other networks. So a lot of people showed that. The NRC saw it. Someone from the NRC said, okay, we saw that video. Do you have a copy of that? I gave it to them. And that caused the NRC to have public hearings. Because the NRC was, like I said, this religious, these guys who were really from the Navy and were totally psyched for nuclear power. And when they saw these morons doing this crap, they didn't, they knew that if it ever got turned on, it'd probably kill 1 million people, and that would be the end of nuclear power. And they didn't want that to be the end of nuclear power. So that's why the NRC got involved, because of that video and because of my mom. So, like I said, go out and do something. I'm not some kind of demigod or, you know, you know, Hollywood movie star. I'm just a dude. I'm the dude, but I'm just a dude. And I just say, okay, I'm gonna go. I never ask for permission. I just go up and do it. My grandma taught me it's a lot easier to say you're sorry than to ask for permission. So, and usually if you do it well enough, you make it fun enough, you make it interesting enough, entertaining enough, that the lower level of authority will come and look at it and go, oh, that's kind of cool. Like when we were doing the housing authority in New York in the early '80s, um, you know, the real estate guys got a little antsy. I mean, we were in neighborhoods nobody wanted. Red Hook, Lower East Side, Brownsville, Harlem, where, these buildings were like, 60 blocks of abandoned buildings. So there was, the banks had redlined everything. There were no stores. There was nothing going. The subway stations were closed down. The buses didn't go there. But we took over buildings and housed 500 homeless families. And we did that over 3 years, And because there was no food, we grew our own food. And so the real estate guys got a little antsy. So they had Mr. Bloomberg and the guy before Bloomberg send the cops in to not arrest us, just to beat us. Just come in, kick the door in, and beat us, right? Because they tried to take us to court, and we had good lawyers. We used the Homestead Act of 1876 and take the properties. I had a master electrician's license. I put legal electricity in all these buildings, so everyone had an electric bill to show they legally lived there, because your electric bill is your platinum card to staying in a property. Shows you belong there. And so they legally couldn't throw us out, so they just had the police come and beat us up. And not arrest us, beat us up. So we had one building that was full of young guys, the young Turks who were anarchists. Well, we should fight them. We should throw Molotov cocktails on them. I said, no. They got machine guns. They got tanks. They got fighter bombers. No. I mean, and there was this thing called, in Philly, it was a group of people who were doing great work. They were called MOVE. And the cops started beating them up and shooting them. And so they got guns. And the cops dropped incendiaries and burnt their building to the ground, but it also burnt out the fire it was a windy day, and 5 blocks of buildings, like 180 buildings, and like 40 people died. And the police did it, but there were 4 MOVE guys who didn't die, and they put them in jail for murder, And so when people are going on about how Carrot Head is like, oh, it's a collapse of people being able to trust the legal system. If you are a poor person or a person of color, you know that justice is not fair. And I worked for 10 years for the cream of the corporate legal world. And, when we'd be in these fancy restaurants, they would bemoan the fact that we live in a fascist state, but hey, they were making millions, so they weren't going to complain too much. So, I was a guy who understood it all, and so they could, vent to me, and I never judge anybody, So, anyway, how we dealt with those police was we didn't throw Molotov cocktails at them. We read them poetry, because one of our buildings was the Nuevo Rican Poetry Alliance, and we had about 20 beautiful, gorgeous Hispanic women go down and read poetry to the police. And after 5 months of doing that, there wasn't a single cop who would want to beat us up. I love those people. They're so nice. The food they make is amazing, and their building is always, I almost want to live there. The people are so great, because we always, that's how you have to deal with authority. You have to make authority feel happy that you're there, that you're part of them. They want to be part of your party. So that's what the alternative aesthetic is. And that's why I want to start the Traveling Video Art Circus. And what I want to do is get a cadre together. And we need some folks who are pretty good at making websites. We need to make a good website. We have to create a good curriculum, and our revenue stream is that we will travel to colleges, right, to um, bring to them, because every college, if you've ever been to college, they take a few $100. Every student chips in for the thing called the Student Activity Fund that runs clubs and dances and events. And by the middle of the year, they're looking because they can't roll the money over. They got to spend every nickel. So if you offer them a good show, you can charge them 5 to 15 grand a week to come in there to give them classes and events and things. And we go in there and really infuse into these young people um, a thirst to know, not to just accept what's given to them, right? And every school that we visit, we will leave a thing called the Freely Inquiring Society. Freely, not meaning free, but open, inquiring to understand. Society, every college has fraternities, sororities, and societies. And once they get in there, they're there for life. Where clubs die every semester, these things stay there, right? So it'd be like Johnny Appleseed leaving these societies where people will have opening up their minds and inquiring about their life. And that's how we change the world, right? Through a new aesthetic. Anyway, so it looks like 2 hours and 5 minutes and 49 seconds, and the little live chat has stopped. This is unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. That usually means see you later. So I hope you enjoyed this evening's chat. I enjoyed hearing from you all. Stay in touch. Remember, get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And hit me on, okay. And go look at my writings at X-Rated, XRATTED, .blogspot.com. And that's the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And also comment, down below, a few more thumbs up, get some more people to subscribe. Let's enlarge the cadre. And I'll keep knocking these out. So I hope you enjoyed this one. We went all over the place on this tonight, but that's kind of what I do. Stream of consciousness responding from you guys. So love you guys. Stay well. I'm going to cut out right now. Okay. And so artists, please email me, right?